Hello everyone. Welcome to Eyezone Education's webinar series. Thank you for joining us. Today's topic is Overview of Clinical Myopia Management, to be presented by Dr. Ka-Wee Tan. Dr. Tan is a co-founder and the Director of Business Development at nthalmic. Prior to this, he was with Brien Holden Vision Institute, the Associate Program Director of the University of Manchester's Optometry program in Singapore, and worked in different management and commercial positions in various multinational companies. He is currently the President of Asia Optometric Management Academy, Chairman of Advisory Council of Asia Optometric Congress, and Regional Director of International Association of Contact Lens Educators for Asia Pacific. He is affiliated with many optometric professional associations in Asia. Dr. Tan's interests are in myopia management, optometric practice model and business, particularly the evolution of the optical industry in Asia. Today, Dr. Tan will present an overview of the importance of myopia management and the key elements in clinical myopia management. By the end of his presentation, he expects participants to understand the importance of myopia burden, as well as the basic elements in myopia management. Furthermore, he will be discussing the role of optometrists in myopia management. Without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to Dr. Ka-Wee Tan.
Thank you, MC, for the introductions. It's my pleasure to be invited at this platform to share about the overview of clinical myopia management. Dear fellow colleagues, I think this is an area that is emerging in many countries, many territories, and we as optometry, optician or ophthalmologists are not spared from expanding our role further in myopia management. If you look at myopia, we know that in the field of vision care, it's a bread and butter in the optical industry. So we have been doing it in the past decades, mainly for vision correction. However, over the last couple of years, we can see that our role is now expanding to more than just vision corrections. And on the other hand, if you look at optometry, it's a profession that crossing between arts and science. We are not just studying science, but we're also dealing with patient. We need communication skill, patient management, and how to interact with patient and the patient's family. So that also involves some element about arts. It's also a profession, a mix between fashion and healthcare. So we are not talking about just healthcare alone, eye healthcare, but we are talking about providing eye care, eyewear to our patient. So some element of fashion are involved. We need to pick the right pair, shape, color of eyeglasses to suit the patient. It is also an imbalance between profession and commercial. Other than we providing eye care services, we also involved in like managing an optometry practice, optical shop, so that we can actually manage it in the so-called commercial approach. So with this, we can see that over the last couple of years, we are facing a lot of these different challenges. And here, these are the two major challenges that we see every day, and it's becoming more and more prominent. One is actually online retailing. So consumer or patient can actually buy spectacle lenses, contact lenses online. And the other one is actually on fast fashion store, where they actually operate based on like fast services. So patient walk in within 20 minutes, they have the eye check, and then they can get a pair of glasses from there. But these are not a complete primary eye care services. However, it also poses some kind of competition to our industry. And these are some of the examples that the moment you go to Google just to type online contact lens sales, online spectacle, there are hundreds of websites pops up where you can actually browse and see the product available. And some are very cheap, some are very low, and some are very colorful. And that's why consumers are so attracted to this platform to buy their optical product. So coming back to this profession, myopia management actually started a couple of years ago, especially in March 2015, followed by a few publications in 2016. So the first one was actually published in the reputable journal called Nature, entitled The Myopia Boom. So in this article, it was the first time that they actually linked the increasing prevalence to myopia correction as well as myopia control. And we can imagine that in this journal, it's a very reputed journal. However, myopia, such a very common condition, is able to make it to this journal. Then in 2016, the late Professor Brien Holden and his co-worker published a paper about the potential change or increase in the myopia prevalence by 2050. And here we can see that by 2050, almost half the world population will become myopic. And the most surprising or striking point is by 2050, almost 10% of the world population will become high myopes, which is above -5 and beyond. So that actually brings us to the issue about this high myopia. High myopia is actually linked to many potential ocular complications, such as cataract, glaucoma, retinal detachment, macular degeneration, etc. And here we can see that from many different publications, the higher the myopes, the higher the risk of developing this eye condition. For example, retinal detachment. If you're above -6, the chances of having retinal detachment could be 22 times higher than the ametro. Same for macular degeneration and glaucoma and cataract as well. So in 2016, the World Health Organization put together a paper entitled The Impact of Myopia and High Myopia. And this was published in the WHO website. And that was a result from a scientific meeting called by the late Professor Brien Holden. So in the past, WHO focused mainly on some other ocular diseases, such as cataract, glaucoma, etc., which would lead to vision impairment and blindness. However, throughout that scientific meeting held in 2015, the WHO actually realized that the major cause of vision impairment is actually uncorrected refractive error. So this paper actually highlights the importance of this myopia burden, and we all should do something about it. And in 2018 and recently in 2020, Professor Kovind Naidu has also presented a paper about the loss of productivity resulting from this myopia burden or global myopia burden. So the impact can be as high as $244 billion US. So just you can imagine that if someone is actually affected by this high myope, potentially it could lead to this so-called visual impairment due to the potential ocular complications such as retinal detachment, macular degeneration, glaucoma, etc. And this visual impairment is not only affecting an individual, the quality of life of this individual, but also the productivity in the community, because this person would not be able to produce or work as effective as the normal vision. So that actually results in this productivity in the community as well as the country and the region. So how much do we know about myopia and the jargon word about myopia management? So here we can see that there are paradigm shift in optometry industry. In the past, we focused mainly on myopia management, such as using spectacle lenses, contact lenses, auto-K, and even like refractive surgery to provide visual correction. Now we are moving towards myopia control with the same set of the product, however, something that is more specialized, like specialized design, spectacle lenses, contact lenses, autokeratology, atropine, or even with outdoor activity, etc. And this is actually lumped as myopia management. So when we look at this myopia management, basically it's cover myopia correction as well as myopia control. And we also know better now with a number of different researchers and publications showing that outdoor activity actually can help to reduce myopia progression. So this is an important research uptake that we can communicate with our patient, the parent, that kids or children should spend a certain number of time outdoor to minimize the rapid increase of the myopia in the livelihood. So if we come back to this myopia management, we need to know what are exactly covered in the clinical management guideline. Now, myopia management is something that is part of the primary eye care. However, we need to incorporate certain new element into it. So other than comprehensive eye check, such as look at a history taking, we probably need to focus on binocular vision, for example. Your binocular vision, to a certain extent, may affect the efficacy or the speed of this myopia progression. Then we need to look at the evaluation of the risk factor. What are the risk factors that might promote higher or faster myopia progression? And then we need to look at individual kids, whether it is ametrope kids or myopia kid, and also to look at the past record. Is it a fast progression or slow progression? And last but not least, we look at all the potential treatment options, either through optical or pharmaceutical, and of course combined with lifestyle, with outdoor activity, and the treatment plan. So in the next few 10 minutes, I will share with you the outline of all these clinical management guidelines. Now, the first one is actually about the comprehensive eye check. This is actually nothing different from what we have been doing day in, day out in our primary eye care services. We need to do history taking, and during this process, we need to identify the risk factor. And this risk factor, for example, ethnicity. Generally, Asian are more prone to myopia progression or faster than Caucasian. And parents who are myope, probably the kids have a high chance of becoming myopic. So single parent or parents, one parent who are myopic compared to both parents are myopic, the risks are actually slightly different. So we need to identify this risk factor. And of course, when we look at the risk factor, we also need to look at the visual behavior. So each individual kid, they probably spend time in like sports, homework, computer game, etc. So how much time does an individual kid spend on outdoor and this close work or computer, etc.? So the more time they spend on close work, the higher chance of like developing this myopia. So we need to incorporate all these risk factors during the history taking. Then we need to look at the visual function. Now we know that in our primary eye care services, we need to assess the accommodation, conversion, and cover type, etc. So binocular vision is one of the elements that we need to emphasize. So we need to actually capture this element so that we understand better about the kids' binocular vision status, because that also may affect the efficacy of the treatment in the later step. Then when we look at the refractions, we need to identify not only just a refractive error, but ideally to look at the axial length as well. Because have been very well documented that axial length is one of the key indicators to monitor the efficacy of myopia progression or myopia control. And of course, last but not least is actually the ocular health. Okay. So just like I mentioned about the risk factor, this is actually the summary of what I mentioned earlier on. Ethnicity, Asian generally is higher compared to Caucasian. Parental myopia, both parents versus both parents are not myopic. So they actually give us some clue or indication about how likely is a kid will become myopia. And we have also, it's also been well known that the younger the kids develop myopia, the faster the progression in the early stage. So that's why it's very important for us as practitioners to intervene or to provide myopia control at as early age as possible. And just like I mentioned about the lifestyle behavior, we are talking about outdoor versus close work. So based on the study, we know that every day, if you spend 80 minutes or 120 minutes per day, that actually helps to reduce myopia progression to a certain extent. And of course, if those kids who are not able to spend time outdoor, we also need to advise on the visual behavior, including visual break, etc. Then the next question is actually, we have to deal with those kids who are still amyotroph and myope. Now, this is actually quite interesting because nowadays, when we look at the kid, when we handle children, most of them are already showing some sign of this myopia. So we need to identify when these kids are becoming myopic, and when they are, is it low or high, and from the past record, is it slow progression or fast progression? Then we have to decide, are we going to intervene this myopia control with a pharmaceutical approach like atropine, or optical approach like spectacle lenses, specially designed soft contact lenses, auto-K, etc. And of course, not to forget that we have to advise about the lifestyle or vision behavior, such as outdoor and screen time. Now, that's another myth in the past that we have always believed, or some practitioners have always believed, that it's good to do undercorrection. But we have now understood that undercorrection may promote higher myopia progression. Even though there's some study showing that undercorrection show no significant difference. However, undercorrection is definitely not a common approach that we should advise to our patient. So now the question for us is, if you come across a 6-year-old kid with myopia of minus 1.5, do you think this is normal? And what would be your clinical management? And if you look at this scenario or this case, a 6-year-old kid with minus 1.5 is definitely not normal. Based on our understanding about the amyotropization, a 6-year-old kid should still have a certain level of hyperopia. They should still have a hyperopic reserve, and it should not be myope. If it's myope at this age, that is considered abnormal. And what we need to do is actually we should start myopia management or myopia control as early as possible. So coming back to this myopia management practice, having said that we need to do something, we still have to abide by a certain principle. Firstly, evidence-based. We need to actually look at those published papers, which option or solutions are available that are effective to reduce myopia progression. And we need to have the skill and knowledge and the suitable tools or equipment. For example, if you do autokeratology, you need to have a cornea topographer. And if you need to measure the axis length, you need to have a biometric so that you can actually monitor the progression of the axis length. And last but not least is actually the holistic approach. This is actually the integrated model where we should not just bias or skew towards one particular treatment only. For example, don't just stick to auto-K, don't just use atropine alone. Because every kid is different, we need to have a holistic approach to evaluate which option is the best for the kids. And after you try it for a period of time, if it doesn't work or it's not effective, then you have considered what is the next plan that is, would recommend to the kids. So these are very important when you implement this myopia management. So coming back to this myopia management, our role as optometrists is not only just on primary eye care services, but we have to start embarking on myopia management. And of course, to play a role in advocacy, to start educating about the parents, schools, teachers, and people around us about this myopia burden and what we should do and what we can do to address this problem before it's too late, before someone end up with high myopia and resulting in visual impairment due to retina diseases, retinal detachment, etc. So the advocacy in myopia management, it can be something that we can do through local society, school, parents, teacher, but we have to send the right message to the people around us. For example, myopia is not a norm for preschool kids. We know that preschool kids should not be myopic. So the moment a parent notices that the kid is already myope, before the kids go to the school, that is a sign that they should bring the kid to see eye care practitioner to do myopia control as early as possible. And again, holistic approach is one of the key points that we have to highlight here. And if you look at the future in this optometry industry, there is a strong fact that there's an increasing prevalence of myopia. And we are fortunate that there are better product or solution that we can use to offer to our community or patient for myopia control. And hopefully in the near future, we have more tools that we can actually monitor myopia control other than excellent, other than this so-called refractive error changes, etc. And then hopefully in the near future, we will have better intervention strategy that we can offer better treatment and visual quality to our patient. So just 2 weeks ago, the Association of Optometry Management, the Asia Optometry Management Academy and the Asia Optometry Congress joined hand in hand to produce this paper called Consensus on Myopia Management. This paper is actually a summary from what we have seen from many research papers in myopia management, and it's actually put together as a clinical reference for practitioners in Asia, where we can use it to adopt it for different country or different territory for use based on the local legislation situation or the scope practice. So hopefully this concept of myopia management can be shared to more and more eye care practitioners in this region, and then we can embark on management practice as early as possible. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. I hope this is an overview about clinical myopia management, and we should start thinking about embarking into myopia management as early as possible. And good luck in your future professional services. Thank you.